There's a human trait where it's about giving, it's about looking after our tribe, our community, because that's how we get the best for us and our family, our surroundings, and it makes a nice community to live in. But then there's also a human trait about individualism, which is also a natural trait. There's no point me giving everything to my community if it means I lose my life and I've not got enough food to eat. So both those traits are valuable for everybody. It's that balance of how you manage both those traits. And mainly because of the society we've had now since the Second World War, that has been disturbed. And then with social media, it's been disturbed even more. And we're the same creatures we've always been. We've just lost our way. And then with the death of God, we don't know. We're tribal creatures. Most people are sheep, and they will do as a tribal leader says them to do, because that was the only way the tribe would survive. And if you had a tribe full of leaders, that tribe would die, because you can't have a tribe full of leaders. You need one leader, otherwise you don't know which way you're running. So that's built into our DNA. But now we've not, and that was replaced by God at a certain extent. In our country, also the king or the queen and head of state as well, in other countries like presidents. But now we're losing all that. We're going down the road of hedonism, as you said. Well, that's fine to a certain extent, but there's nothing beyond that. Hence why, is it a quarter of women are on antidepressants? Why men are killing themselves at an extremely high rate? It's because once you get past that new handbag or that new type of porn, what's beyond that? And the answer is nothing. So life's not worth living. So you're depressed or you kill yourself. There's a lack of meaning in the West, a real lack of meaning.
The disequilibration falls into two camps I see, and I think I do think it's gender specific. And I think the dominant paradigm is now a very pathologically feminized way of governance, mainly because of female enfranchisement, female enrollment in the workforce. And lots of women have been manipulated against their own self interest by resentful feminists who have the express desire, like Simone de Beauvoir, to abolish the family and discontinue the human race by abolishing reproduction. But that's because it's in an 800-900 page book. Most people don't realize that. They instead just masquerade it as liberation, right? So the issue that you have is with the excess giving of all you have under the guise of compassion. It allows crises to be confected or exaggerated by the exact kind of narcissists and Machiavellians that we said we don't want leading the movement. And that excuses the dispensation of moral principles in crisis time to then suddenly lock you in your house for 2 years and take all the money and forget about the consequences because we really have to fix this right now. And then when the next crisis comes along and the reserves are always depleted, but you're constantly taking from someone else. And I do think that is it's like the devouring mother bear or the devouring mother archetype in mythological fiction. Gad Saad came up with a phrase for it called like collective Munchausen by proxy, where you are feigning your suffering in caring for another group or person who is suffering, and so getting the clout of the crowd for how much you've sacrificed to do the right thing and be the right person, and take that person's money over there because they're evil and give it to the group that really, really need it. Whereas you are overlooking all of the social impacts that has, like the pathological import of a bunch of refugees, self-described refugees, adventurers on dinghies, let's just say as is, who have antithetical values to the country that made this country great, but want all the money that is the outgrowth of the fact that we had an excellent culture. And we are expected to work to then have about a third of our income tax so they can piddle that away on cigarettes and shoes every day, right? Not good. And then the other side of that is the extrication of people from communities because they see the collectivism, the involuntary collectivism of the left, and think, well, I don't want to be a part of that. So I'll just shut myself off from politics. The kind of like 90s teenager mentality that's now gone to its real nihilistic endpoint of where men are just checking out, right? The Japanese call this herbivorous men, the kinds that don't want to date, that are addicted to pornography, that are overeating. And you wonder why incel culture has risen up. Now, I understand. I've got a bit of compassion with some men who really don't feel that their genetic ceiling is that high and they don't think they can manifest attraction, especially when women are paralyzed by analysis because they see the best and richest men on dating apps, and at any time they can sleep with pretty much any of them if you edit your photos enough and have low enough standards for your own propriety, right? But frankly, a lot of men can really fix their stuff by just getting down the gym, training, cultivating their sense of ethics, earning. But there are a lot of perverse incentives in society which set you against that. The lack of fatherhood, of course, and the fact that, again, you're taxed to death by these insanely faux compassionate feminized governance structures that take away half your income and mean that lads like me can't get a house till their late 20s, early 30s, if that. But all the other people will get a skip ahead of you in the line. So what we really need is not just what the Westminster bubble keeps saying about build more houses or lower tax brackets. We need a cultural reconstitution, not a revolution towards what the leftists say, but a melding the appropriate golden mean between being an individual, but also building yourself up as an individual. And then it doesn't just stop there. It's not like selfishness is in and of itself a virtue. It's that there is great meaning in serving those who are least capable. This was the sort of like revolutionary idea that the Christians had over the Romans, in that there's not something virtuous in being weak, but there is something virtuous in showing compassion to those who are genuinely incapable of bettering themselves. And sometimes those who haven't yet understood how to better themselves, but you can give them a helping hand, much like the Good Samaritan, and they can, through restitution, build themselves up and serve you in kind, reciprocal altruism. And I think we've lost that kind of sense. And with that, we've lost a sense of manhood that finds great meaning in looking after those who need it.
That reminds me of something Jordan Peterson said, because obviously he's big into the Bible, reads the Bible, does lectures on different books of the Bible. And he talked about a famous phrase in the Bible, which we've probably all heard of, that the meek shall inherit the earth. And he looked into the meaning of that and got different interpretations of the original text, which was Hebrew, but then it went through Greek and then into Latin, then into English. And we've got this perverted version of the Bible. So he went back to the Hebrew scholars and found out what it means. And they say what it actually means is not the meek shall inherit the earth. It said, he who has a sword, but yet keeps it sheathed, will inherit the earth.
See, so the translation I found as well, and this might be the Greek version, I discussed this with Carl in our book club on Nietzsche's Genealogy of Morals, was actually he who manifests the warrior spirit of a bridled battle horse who does not charge of ahead of his time will inherit the earth. And that actually, the sword one syncs up with the later verse that Christ says, obviously sell your cloak so that you can at least own a sword. But then the horse one syncs up with the rest of Revelations, where Christ comes and rides in to usher in the judgment on the back of the white horse. So both interpretations or translations are pretty accurate.
Yeah, but they're completely different to the one we read in the Bible today, which has a different meaning altogether. So the one today means the meek shall inherit the earth. There's nothing virtuous about being meek, but there is in the other sayings, as in a powerful man with a weapon who doesn't use his power or his weapon to get his own way will inherit the earth. I think that has a different meaning altogether.